everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast on the Bet Rivers Network, brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Casamigos Tequila is brought to you by those who drink it. Week 2, the National Football League began last night, and we're ready on this Football Friday on the Mike Francesa channel, on the Bet Rivers Network, on YouTube, after Buffalo continued its mastery of the Dolphins, and not only beat them easily last night with a big defensive performance, but left them in shambles. I mean, because if you stayed with the game, you know that Tua, who has always had a problem, really two big problems. One, he never had great arm strength, despite having a lot of talent. Two, he has always been a runner who has left himself wide open for injury. He's never protected himself. And last night, another example where he could have gone down and slid and protected himself. Instead, he led head first and suffered another concussion. And now, in all good conscience, the league, the team, the people who care about Tua personally, his family, his loved ones, have to take a serious look at where this player is, because, I mean, he is absolutely headed to a disastrous life, considering how many bad hits to the head he has taken, how many serious, and that was another serious concussion last night. You saw the tremble in his arms and his shoulders. How many bad hits can he take? How many serious hits to the head can he take? And I can't see him coming back anytime soon. I really can't. I don't think in good conscience the Dolphins or the NFL can allow him to be back on the field. I understand he just signed a very big contract. Obviously, contracts of those type are protected. They're insured. You're looking at a situation where you have to really put his season in doubt and put his career in doubt at this point. Now, the first pick last night was not his fault. He put the ball right on the receiver who was not prepared for the play. It wound up with a deflected interception. The other two were his and his alone. He overthrew the receiver and got it picked off, and then was under duress because his left tackle and his left guard were out of the game. He was under pressure. He tried to throw the ball out of bounds, and he didn't get it there. Again, arm strength. And it got picked off for a touchdown. And after that, the Dolphins knocked on the door but couldn't do anything. And you cannot see them. You can't see, at least I can't see Tua coming back anytime very soon. I mean, that'd be very hard to explain. For the league, for the team, for those around him, for the doctors. So they have to be in the market for a quarterback, because they cannot live with Thompson as their quarterback. That's obvious. Now, there's a couple of obvious choices here. Number one, Tannehill's outside looking for a job. He's not the player he once was, but he is a play-action quarterback in a system that uses a lot of running game and a lot of variations of running game, with Mostert, who wasn't there last night, with Ashawn, who was really the only Dolphin who was productive last night. He had 76 yards receiving and 98 yards rushing, and half the time had no blocking at the point of attack. I could see Tannehill. Garoppolo makes sense. He's with the Rams. The Rams also have Bennett. They might let Garoppolo go to give him an opportunity to take over a team. I can see Tannehill. I can see Garoppolo. There's a couple of younger guys you could take a chance on. I think Tannehill and Garoppolo are the most likely candidates. I'm sure you're going to hear Kaepernick's name, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I think they have to go out and get a quarterback and not rush Tua back if he even comes back. I just don't know what his status can be. You know, we watched a great player, a player who was clearly going to be one of the great players in the league, in Luck, leave the game early because He played behind some offensive lines that rendered him defenseless, and he took incredible hits to where he suffered serious injuries and said, no mas. He had made a lot of money. He had already shown a great ability in the league, had a great career in college, showed a great ability in the league in the years he played. Uh, Never got to the Super Bowl, of course, but decided, hey, I'm going to leave the game in one piece, and he did, and has not looked back. I just don't know what the future can hold for Tua after another serious concussion. So we'll wait and see what happens now with the Dolphins. The Bills 2-0 have to be happy with their start. They continue to dominate the Dolphins in the Josh Allen era. They have done that time and time again. All right, week 2 in the league. Jets and Giants both coming off losses. Jets will be in Tennessee to take on the Titans. The Reddick thing continues to not only perplex, but just disappoint on so many levels. Because if the Jets do deal him, well, how does that help them? They let another player leave. I understand that Huff hasn't done much in Philly in his first week, and he might be a little bit in Fangio's doghouse. But he was productive for the Jets. Now they just don't have him, and they don't have Reddick. And they didn't need this to happen. And they're going to have to restructure a little bit of what they're going to do and rely on other people in what was an awful week 1 for their defense. They get a Tennessee team which lost one of the bizarre games that you're ever going to see. I mean, they led that game 17-0. They completely bottled up the Bear offense with Williams at quarterback. He did absolutely nothing. They're up 17-0. They give up a field goal. They're up 17-3. They get a punt block for a touchdown. Now it's 17-10. They give up another field goal off a turnover, 17-13. Another field goal, 17-16. Then they give up a pick 6. And now they're down 24-17. So they give up 24 unanswered points without the Bears moving the ball at all on offense. I mean, a terrible loss for the Titans and Levis. Now they get the Jets, who never really had a chance to get their offense going in week 1, should be much better in week 2. I know there's a lot of readjusting of the Jets right now. Oh, their defense is no good. Well, I don't buy that. They got out-schemed, out-coached. The Niners were better prepared, but they lost to a team that's a Super Bowl team on the road in week 1. Take that into account. Number 2, people who say the Jet roster isn't talented, I don't get it. I mean, listen, we could go down, and we're gonna pinpoint a lot of players on both sides of the ball who are really good football players. So I don't buy that for a second. Do they have to be a little different team than they were last year? Yes, but that's fine. They elevated their offensive line dramatically. They have game-breaking players at running back and wide receiver, and they have an all-world quarterback. They have players on each level of the defense who are stars. So the idea they don't have talent, I just don't get. That's just a severe overreaction after 1 week. As for the Giants, they were putrid in week 1. They get Washington in week 2. And you don't like to overrate something early in the season, but the schedule breaks badly, very badly for the Giants if they should lose in Washington against a quarterback making the second start of his career. And Washington was absolutely singed by Baker Mayfield, who threw for 4 touchdowns, 2 to Evans, took them apart. And you would expect the Giants to be a different team this week, be much better defensively, and be able, against the young quarterback who's just still learning his trade, to win this game. If they don't, they're in Cleveland in week 3. They play Dallas on Thursday night at home in week 4. And they go to Seattle in week 5, which is never, ever an easy game. And then they play the Bengals on Sunday night. That is a rough schedule if they're 0-2. So this is a game that if the Giants don't get this thing could come cascading down around their shoulders, around the shoulders of the head coach, around the shoulders of the quarterback immediately. This league, more than any other, your season is predicated on a good start. If you're a team that's borderline and you open up 3-1 or 4-1, everybody buys in. Players who are beat up play harder. People buy in to the coach, to the game plan, to the team concept, everything. It unifies. Conversely, if you're that borderline team and you open up 1-4 or 1-5, guys start thinking about contracts. Guys start thinking about, I'm not playing hurt. They're worried about this guy. This guy's not doing his job. This guy's not. And teams fracture very quickly. More so in this league than any other. So starts matter. The first month matters so much. And that's why when you look at the schedule, the Jets, number one, they play the fourth easiest schedule in the league this year. Number two, the next 4 games are winnable games for them. Very winnable games before they see the Bills. The Giants, on the other hand, have got 4 brutal games after this week. This is a game they need to win. So if the Jets are 0-2, you're going to be bitterly disappointed. If the Giants are 0-2, they are headed in towards an absolute disaster. Bucs and Lions. Bucs win game 1. Mayfield has a big game. Now they get the Lions. Lions won in overtime last week. Lined up in overtime against the Rams, who lost so many players last week in that game and lost Nakua for probably 6 weeks, and just lined up in overtime and ran the ball right down the Rams' throat and right into the end zone. That's because they have the best offensive line in the sport. And it showed. They want to show that their secondary is better. Let's see if they can show that against the Buck passing game, which has been good. Now, this is a rematch of last year's playoff game, which was a good game. Tampa played well. I'm worried about Tampa this year. I thought they'd win game 1 because they have Washington. This is a game I don't expect them to win. If they did, I'd have to reassess. Saints had a great week 1. They got Carolina. Now they get Dallas. Dallas played a really good game. Mike Zimmer's defense played really well. Now, Cleveland was playing without both starting tackles. It crippled their offense. But you like what you saw from the Cowboys in week 1. Saints are, one of those 500 teams, going to have their days, going to be up and down. We'll see what happens in week 2. Colts lost a tough one to a good Houston team. Packers now have to go for a couple of weeks with Willis at quarterback. It doesn't look like Love will be out that long. He could be back, they say, in 3 weeks. No damage to the MCL. Slight sprain. Going to need a couple of weeks off. Could be back 2 to 3 weeks. Right now, we'll see how far the Packers slip without Love. Colts lost a tough game. Made some big plays, but could not stop the Texans when they needed to. And the Texans won a 29-27 game in Indianapolis. Colts are favored. Go either way. Niners and the Vikings. Vikings come off a good win. Sam Darnold played well against the Giants. Now the Niners, who probably will sit McCaffrey again, I would think. If Mason calf muscles linger, and if Mason's going to run like that, why rush McCaffrey back? You got to win in week 1. Now you're playing Minnesota in week 2. I don't think it's a big deal. I think they could sit him again. Seahawks got a win against Denver and Knicks. They get the Pats. Pats stunned everybody last week, winning at Cincinnati. Knocked out a gazillion people's survivor pools. I told you before the season started that if Brissett started all the games, they were going to win more than the 4 games that were forecast for him. You could count that. They got one in week 1, even though Brissett didn't do a whole lot. Um, this won't be an easy game for the Seahawks. And who knows, if the Pats open 2-0, people are going to be stunned. Chargers against Carolina, which looked dreadful. And you know what you're going to get out of the Chargers? Harbaugh wants to run the football. He's got, obviously, a budding star at tackle and all. Dobbins and Edwards are the running backs. Dobbins last week, 135 yards on 10 carries. Dobbins has tremendous talent at running back. And if he's healthy, he could have a big year. And these are the kind of games Chargers are going to win. They're not going to give these. In the old days, the Chargers would find a way to lose this game. They won't lose this game on the Harbaugh. And they won't lose those kind of games on the Harbaugh. That's the difference. Browns are very unsettled on offense right now. Very unsettled at quarterback right now. Jaguars lost a tough game to the Dolphins. A game they led most of the way. The Jags are the team in the league, to me, that has ability, that seems to be missing something right now. People are blaming Lawrence. It's not just Lawrence. There's something. You expected more from them where they were in the playoffs 2 years ago. Last year, we know Lawrence was hurt. This year, that's a bad start because that's a game they could have won and should have won. Raiders at the Ravens. Ravens lost to the Chiefs in week 1 in a tough game. We know what happened on the last play of the game. You expect them to bounce back, and that's a bad place for the Raiders to be this week. That Ravens, you figure, are going to get even and probably do it in a big way. Rams and Cards. Rams came out of that game all banged up. Cards actually played well in Buffalo, except for the extremely, clearly overconfident wide receiver named Harrison Jr., who had a rough game 1. You saw him have a big drop, and then you saw him wide open with his hands up waving downfield late in the game. And you could tell Kyler Murray was not happy with his young wide receiver. So we'll see how that works out. The expectations for him so high. We know how good he is. But he had a very rough week 1. I'll be fascinated to see just how much he sees the ball in week 2. Steelers won a game in Atlanta. Frankly, I thought they'd get beaten in Atlanta week 1. They didn't. They shut down Cousins. Cousins had a nasty game, really a bad game. And Atlanta, is one of those teams that so much is expected this year. We'll see. But that was a big win for the Steelers. Now they get the Broncos and Knicks. And the Steelers know Knicks is not going to drive the ball down the field. He's going to try and dink and dunk. And this is not a great defense for Knicks to play against. So this, to me, looks like a 13-10 somebody. Bengals, how bad were they in week 1? Now they get Kansas City. Not a good spot. Not a good spot. And there's a lot going on in Cincinnati. A lot of unhappy wide receivers. A lot of unhappy players. You wonder what's going on and whether that team has now seen the window slam shut despite what they have at quarterback, despite what was expected from this team. Has this team missed the boat and heading in the wrong direction? The Sunday night game is the Bears, who got a win when they never should have. But give their special teams and their defense credit. Their number 1 pick quarterback had a rough game. Not unusual for a guy to have a rough game in week 1 for an NFL quarterback, no matter how, ballyhooed he is. Bears get a win. Now they get the Texans. The Texans are good. Their quarterback is real good. I expect this to be a very tough spot for the Bears. The Bears already got a win. Texans got a win. Now the Texans get them. They want to show the country Sunday night, hey, we're a legitimate threat to go all the way this year. And I think they put their stamp on this game in a big way. And then the Falcons, who desperately need a win, get the Eagles on Monday night. Cousins cannot be that bad, can he? He cannot be that bad. He went there to be the guy, and he didn't knock the rust off after last year. That was a terrible performance. And we know the Steelers have a good defense. And now the Eagles, who, slip slide their way to a win against the Packers. Barkley had a big game. Tough spot for the Falcons, but should be an interesting game with the Falcons and the Eagles in Philadelphia come Monday night. So Sunday night, Bears and Texans. Monday night, Falcons and Eagles. Last week, the thing that's jumped out was how little big-time passing we saw in the league. Mayfield had a good game. Stafford threw for 300 yards in week one. Tua threw for 300 yards in week one. The only two quarterbacks who threw for 300 yards in the entire league in week one. Why? Because these teams are taking away the deep ball. They are saying, go ahead. We're putting our safeties out there. Go ahead. Throw the ball. Come underneath with the ball. Run the ball. Go to the sideline with the ball. Try to beat us horizontally. You're not beating us vertically. You're not getting the ball down the field. So offenses are going to have to adjust to the way these teams are playing. This is what teams did to Kansas City. And what you have to do is you have to use your speed and utilize your game breakers in a different fashion now, where you've got to get them moving laterally, use crosses to get people edges, use motion to get guys moving, get the defenses moving, and you're going to have to throw more intermediate passes to the sidelines to take advantage of the fact that these guys are basically taking their safeties and planting them down the field to take away the big play. And you're seeing it all over the league. And it's going to be interesting to see what teams adjust to it well, what top passes adjust to it well. You've seen Andy Reid already, and Andy's got as fertile an offensive mind as you will see. Shanahan will always try to do it with his running game. Andy will try to do it in different ways. But utilize your speed guys in a way to take advantage of the matchups and get them moving, and then get the defense moving where your big plays are going to be made first with your players traveling laterally and then breaking it upfield rather than just throwing the ball deep downfield. Those matchups are going to be few and far between. And that's the way you're seeing scores were down. Passing numbers were way down. The quarterbacks in the league did not even average 200 yards passing this week in week one. So the adjustment has been made by the defenses. Let's see what the offenses do in the next couple of weeks. And early in the season, remember, the defenses are always ahead of the offenses in the first couple of games. Guys don't play in preseason anymore. You don't have a lot of timing on these offenses that much. The offenses that do better are the offenses that come out and run the ball, usually in the first couple of weeks. You don't get that much big-time explosive passing. And let's see how this adjustment happens over the next couple of weeks. Because clearly the defenses have, and every time though, the one thing that happens in the NFL is every time the defense gets an advantage, the NFL panics because they want points, because points plays into who they are, especially when you consider fantasy, and they'll make rule changes to help the offense. They never make rule changes to help the defense. So when the defense gets an advantage, they take it away. That's why it's far better to be an offensive coordinator than a defensive one, because the defensive guy, as soon as you come up with something that works, they're going to take it away, and if they have to take it away by rule, they'll take it away by rule. Now, I told you about the squares and how if you make the same game parlay on the BetRivers app at betrivers.com, you can maybe win $10,000. Someone in the New York area won $10,000 last week. Players can play same-game parlays on college football and NFL games to earn squares. The exclusive Squares game offers additional chances, profit boosts, bonus bets, and $10,000 jackpots. A New York bettor won $10,000 on the Bet Rivers Squares thanks to the final score of the BYU SMU game last Friday. So I don't know who it was in the metropolitan area who got it, but congratulations to whoever the New York bettor was who won $10,000. So he made a same game parlay. He got his squares. You can get up to 3. You can get 1 if you bet more than $10. You can get more than 1. You can get up to 3, and who knows? You can win up to $10,000. I'm checking my lips out here to see if I have some blood on because I had a tooth extracted, so I apologize for that. So I just want to make sure my mouth isn't bleeding because it's still bleeding a little bit. They had to take a tooth out underneath one of my caps, so that's why I'm conscious of that today, because I still have some blood underneath the gum there coming out. Couple things on baseball before we get to a couple other things. Big weekend. Yanks and the Red Sox. Yanks get the win last night. Mets and the Phillies. The Mets are going to see the Phillies 7 times here in the next 10 days. Braves are playing the Dodgers right now. Mets have a 1-game lead in the wild card over the Braves. So a big series with the Mets and the Phillies. Yankees have the Red Sox. They're 2 up on the Orioles. I want to mention Cortez here because I like this about Cortez. Cortez was ticked that they pulled him out of the rotation and put him in the bullpen. He was mad. But you know what? When he pitched mad, he pitched better. And he even said, I was unhappy. I deserve better. I didn't deserve to come out of the rotation, but I will never let my team down, and I will never sulk, and I will always take the ball and do my best. And he went out there in the bullpen, pitched great the other night, and I'm telling you, I looked at him and said, hey, if I can get a left-hander who can come in a game and throw strikes like that out of the bullpen, I'm really I know he's going to jump up and down, but I'm considering him in the bullpen right now. I'm going to back off starters in the postseason. I desperately need to make sure I have enough in the back of that pen. And I'm telling you something, what I saw from Cortez out of the bullpen, I got to admit, I really liked it. And I know he'll jump up and down. And last night he started and he did a good job against the Red Sox. He went 5 and change. He struck out 9 guys. And he wants to start. But he also said, hey, when they give me the ball, I will do my best every single time. And he pitched angry. Last night he pitched angry out of the bullpen, and he was great out of the bullpen the other day. And you know what? Opened my eyes. And they need that in the worst way. So if they need him to do that, hey, be mad all the way through the postseason, but get people out. So I thought that was a distinct positive. Everybody worried about Judge. Hey, Judge is human. Do you think he's just going to come up every night in the first inning and hit a home run? Yes, I know. Now this is the longest streak of his career. Oh, he's slugging .269 in his last 16 games. What is going on in the world? Hey, there's always the chance in September he might be a mite tired. Right now, he's not going to get a lot of time off. Yankees are trying to win a division. They're trying to have the best record. They have work to do. Now, if they can get hot here and they stay hot through the 26th of September, they might be able to take a couple days off at the end of the season. But it's unlikely because it hasn't been that way all year. And the Yanks have struggled offensively. Why? Because lately, Soto has not been hot, has not been slugging high, has not hit much in his last 10 games or so. Judge has had a rough last 15, 16 games. Judge in his last 54 at bats over the last 15 games is hitting 200 and has a 269 slugging percentage. Okay. He's human. 11 for 54, no homers, 4 RBIs, 20 strikeouts, 204 batting average, 340 on base because he walks, 2.59 slugging. .259 slugging. Soto, same thing. He's dipped under. His OPS is now 995. He's 4 for his last 25. He's hit 228 over his last 15 with a slugging in the threes. Hey, they both have had brilliant seasons. Soto's had an MVP year. Judge has had a year that's a top MVP year. A no-brainer MVP year. He cooled off a little bit, so he's not going to hit 60 home runs. Who cares? Yes, he hasn't hit a home run in a long time. It happens. It happens. He's human. And they have carried this team all year. Take that into account and understand that, over 162 games, the pitcher's allowed to get him out once in a while. I mean, for the season, the guy's still hitting 319 with 51 homers and 126 RBIs. And he still has 15 games to play. Maybe he's going to rip off 7 or 8 home runs in the 15 games. Maybe he's going to hit 1 or 2. I don't know. Well, the more important thing is what he's going to do in the postseason. I've told you all season, Soto's mindset and the way he goes to the plate, I can't wait to see him in the postseason because his at-bats are so good all the time. Even when he doesn't do well, his at-bats are good. That I can't wait to see him in the postseason. But let's be honest. What we've learned is that the Yankees can probably beat anybody in the American League, but these teams in the playoffs can all beat the Yankees. They are anything but unbeatable. They're clearly vulnerable. They're vulnerable in their lineup when Soto and Judge are on fire. They're vulnerable in their starting pitching because there's guys there I worry about in a big spot. And they're clearly vulnerable in the back of the pen. And they're not even sure yet how they want to attack this at certain positions. Are they going to forget about Verdugo now and play Dominguez? How are they going to handle these things? Clearly, they're going to play Rizzo at first base. We know that. Okay? But he hasn't been great. They need guys to step up around the big two. They have needed that all year. They still haven't defined the back of the pen. You tell me right now they're in a big game and they have a 3-2 lead in the ninth and they're going to face the middle of the order at Yankee Stadium with a one-run lead. Boone's going out there and he's just made his call to the pen. Give me the guy who's coming in, who you feel confident is going to get those 3 outs. There isn't one guy. Now, you want to tell me there are guys who can do it on a given night? Yeah, they got 4 or 5 of those. But a guy who's going to do it most nights, they don't have one of those. Mets are going to ride Diaz as far as they can ride him. We know that. They're going to live, they're going to sink, they're going to swim with Diaz. We know that. He's one of the best. He's not perfect, but he's one of the best. Yankees don't have that. And they know it. And that's why I have to admit, considering some of the things you're going to see, having a left-hander who can go out there and throw strikes, I don't care if he's angry. It could be a big factor. I think Cortez could be a very big factor in the pen. And him being demoted and going there and then performing like that had to open their eyes. If it didn't open your eyes, what are you looking at? It had to open your eyes. The problem with the Yankees is they're 2 games up right now on the Orioles, who have not played well in a long time. And for the most part, the Yankees haven't played that well for them in a long time. But the biggest thing is the Yankees are top-heavy. You can't see them winning if they don't get a big performance from Soto, a big performance from Judge, and a big performance from Cole. And they have a lot of question marks this late in the season. You don't want to carry a whole bunch of... You might not win, but you don't want to carry a whole lot of question marks into the postseason. You want to have defined who you are before that. They haven't. They're still making decisions about things in late September, and that's not a positive. Now, I don't think there's a great team in the American League. There isn't. There's not a great team in baseball, as a matter of fact, right now. I would call both playoffs wide open. But that means wide open, not just for the Yankees, wide open for everybody. I mean, look at Kansas City. Kansas City has a couple of great players in their lineup. And they have a lot of pitching. You got a lot of... You're playing them in a short series. You're going to be in some tough ball games. They got some scary guys in that lineup, and they can really throw. And that's not a team that's considered to be a great team by any stretch, but that's a dangerous team. So, like I said, don't be crazy about Judge. One of these nights, maybe it's tonight, the next night, Judge is going to send one flying in the first inning, and all will be right with the world. Home run hitters are streaky. It's been that way forever. And it'll continue to be that way. All right, let me finish up with some... emails. Let's see what we have here. A couple of them before we say goodbye. And remember, we will see you on Sunday. Jets and Giants are both playing at 1 o'clock. Jets in Tennessee, Giants in Washington, both playing this week, 1 o'clock. So we will be up after both games have concluded. Both coaches have spoke, and we will be up. And obviously, if somebody wins going away, their game's a lot easier to talk about than if somebody suffers a brutal defeat. But we will deal with both games together right here on the Mike Francesa channel, on the Bet Rivers Network, on YouTube on Sunday. And remember, go to the Bet Rivers app at betrivers.com for all of your wagering needs and to play the Squares game. And remember, as always, the program is brought to you by Casamigos Tequila. Is brought to you by those who drink it. Now, Mike Francesa podcast at gmail.com. Michael starts us off. As bad as Daniel Jones has been, is Drew Lock some kind of savior? No. But the one thing I don't like about this is the Giants paid Jones. And things really turned sour last year. And it was very clear that they were in a position where he was going to be here this year and he was going to be their guy. And they did nothing but really go out of their way to insult him and to make it clear that they didn't want him. It's not the way to build a team. It really isn't. And we cannot like anything we saw in week one. I mean, I'm not worried about the fact that Neighbors said this or Kiwanuka said that. Who cares about that stuff? That stuff's silly. What you're concerned about is productivity, how the defense went about doing its job last week, how the offense went about doing its job last week, and how they can get better real quick. That's what you're worried about. But this is Daniel Jones' team. Mike, speaking of Otani, who would you compare his power and speed to? You would have to compare him to guys like, he steals a lot of bases, but you would have to compare him to Bonds. More than anybody else, you would have to compare him to Bonds. In eras, guys run more. This year, it's easier to steal bases. Stolen bases, to me, stolen base has always been about when you steal the base. There are stolen bases that are stolen in situations where it means absolutely nothing. And there are stolen bases that can turn series around. Just remember Boston Yankees, 2004. There are times when you have to steal a base. There are times when if you don't try to steal the base, you have really let everybody down. Those are the bases that have to be stolen. So stolen base is a odd statistic. Home runs are a very different statistic. Okay. Somebody could start the season and say, I'm stealing 50 bases and steal. See, nobody cares if you steal them in big spots or small spots. And nobody cares if you steal them in 60 attempts or 90 attempts. No one says anything. So they just say, wow, you got 50 stolen bases. Well, what if he was 50 for 90? Or what if he's 50 for 58? And what if he only stole when his team was behind? Or he only stole in games that were, within one run? That kind of thing. So the stolen base has to be looked at in a vacuum, while power is power. And listen, he's a brilliant player. We know that. But Bonds would be Barry Bonds would be the most likely guy. Danny, do you think the Giants owners regret going the PSL route? As a season ticket holder, it's embarrassing how every home game we are flooded with visiting fans. The visiting fans thing has become a very big thing all over the league. So I don't want to blame that just on any decision the Giants made, because that's happening now. Any NFL city you go to, there are visiting fans at the games. That's just the way the world works now. I have made this point on numerous occasions. The Giants' demise can be, in a very big way, linked to the building of the new stadium. They didn't need. First of all, they built a new stadium and really did very little in upgrading the facility. Very little. They have the worst. You see palaces now around the NFL. Stadiums that are unbelievable. You don't say that when you go there. That's the most underwhelming building that has been built in recent years. It's just, they didn't need it. And that made them do things that they didn't want to do. It made them do things financially that they didn't want to do. It changed relationships inside the organization that they didn't need. And then it caused the PSL, which changed their fan base dramatically and permanently. And it was the worst thing that ever happened to their fans, without any question. And completely changed the fan base. So I think the stadium was a disaster and has been for the franchise and has impacted their play on the field. Do you think Mara regrets his decision on how he forced Coughlin out? Listen, to be fair, and I like and respect Tom Coughlin, and Tom Coughlin has games here and trophies here that are here forever. And I think he will be a Hall of Fame coach. But he had 3 straight losing seasons. So the fact that they made a change is not anything unusual or in any way something they should regret. The problem is they've done a bad job picking coaches. What did you think of Brady and his broadcasting debut? Good question, Joey, and this got a lot of play. Number one, this is nothing you can do anything about. He doesn't have a great voice that cuts through. That's just luck of the draw. He's got a little bit of a high-pitched voice, which I think in stadiums that are going to be very loud and later in the season, I think that could be a little bit of an issue, but they can deal with that technically. I think he will clearly do his work. I don't think there's any question. I think Brady does nothing halfway. I think he does everything to the fullest extent. So I think he will be ultra prepared. What I need to hear, and I can't make a decision off 1 week because it's not fair. He only has 1 game under his belt. And I didn't think his performance was bad in any way. I thought at times he was self-deprecating. I thought he took his role as a rookie rather than as, the GOAT. He also is working with a great guy in Burkhardt, who is as good a guy as they come. He comes from a WFN background. He started with us. He's had an incredible run. He's become a big player. He's a wonderful guy. Okay, we all root for him. He's the nicest guy in the world. I text with him now and again, and I stay in touch with him. He's a wonderful guy. You couldn't be happier for a guy like that. So he's working with a really good guy. And I think Brady will give it his all, but the question I have is this. Number one, how much is Tom pulled by the ownership, and how much does the ownership of the Raiders mean to him? He really shouldn't even be doing games because of his ownership with the Raiders. And that gives him an out anytime he wants by saying, hey, this is tough for me to be an owner and to do the games. And I think he really wants to continue his ownership for the rest of his life. Why wouldn't he? It's a great way to make money, and, you can be involved in the game and get more and more parts of the get a bigger percentage of the team as you go along. The question will be how much he's willing to put himself out there and be critical. It's fascinating to me how much, and it's good for these guys, but how much these guys spend, how much the networks spend and worry about having analysts when the broadcast teams are clearly discussed and the top teams, are very talented guys. No one's taking that away from them. They're very good play-by-play guys. But they don't impact the business one iota. Nobody watches the game because of who's broadcasting it. Nobody. You would watch the Giants if they put the 5th team on the game. You might not like the announcer, but you don't care. You want to watch the game. Nobody, not even the days of Summerall Madden, who everyone liked, but you did not watch the game if they weren't on your game that week. Nobody tunes into the game because of who's broadcasting it. You could put the last team on the biggest game. The game is going to get the exact same rating as it will with the number 1 team. And that's why it's fascinating sometimes why the networks trip over themselves to worry about this stuff, because it does not impact their business one iota. It is all subjective, and it's all stuff that is image conscious, but does not affect the bottom line one iota. which is fascinating when you think about it. See, when you do a radio show like I did forever, it's about me. It's about Mike and the Mad Dog. Either you listen to us or you don't listen to us. It's about us. We're the product. They're not the product. The game is the product. There's no difference between games. I can guarantee it. This is a study's been done a million times. If you put the number 1 team on the game or put the number 5 team on the game, it's going to get the same exact rating. So then why would you pay guys a fortune? It's a good question. Will, if the Jets begin to falter, how do you think Rodgers will handle the New York media? I think it depends how he's playing. And I think the Jets, if they really get off to a bad start and this thing is crashing and burning, it will be very ugly for all concerned. All concerned inside that franchise, including Rodgers. So I think there will be such a level of disappointment that it will be a very, very ugly and uncomfortable situation. We'll see you later.